So let's jump on over to this other screen. Hope everything's looking good on your end. Ah, beautiful. Beautiful. Okay, so what we're seeing here is obviously the Terracotta Army, but you're asking yourself, what is it? What is the Terracotta Army? Well, question asked. So we'll start. The Terracotta Army is a collection of terracotta sculptures depicting the armies of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China. It is a form of funerary art buried with the emperor in between the years 210 and 209 BCE, with the purpose of protecting the emperor in his afterlife. The figures, dating from approximately the late 3rd century BCE, were discovered in 1974 by local farmers in Linting County, outside Qiang, Shaanxi, China. The figures vary in height according to their roles, the tallest being the generals. The figures include warriors, chariots, and horses. Estimates from 2007 were that the 3 pits containing the Terracotta Army held more than 8,000 soldiers, 130 chariots with 520 horses, and 150 cavalry horses, the majority of which remains buried in the pits near Qin Shi Huang's mausoleum. Other terracotta non-military figures are found in other pits, including officials, acrobats, strongmen, and musicians. Pretty interesting. So check this out. That is Emperor, or a painting of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, China's first emperor. And just to kind of get a glimpse of where this all happened. So, we're looking right there. You can obviously see where it's located on the bigger part of the map. So, it's right there, smack in the middle between, it's Ganyu, Shanxi, and Henan. I'm probably butchering those names. Cool. So, move on. And you're wondering, where does this all come from? What's the history behind this? Check it out. History of the Terracotta Army. Bam! So the construction of the tomb was described by historian Sima Quan, which is between the years 145 and 90 BCE, in records of the Grand Historian. So that's the first of China's 24 dynastic histories, which was written a century after the mausoleum's completion. Work on the mausoleum began in 246 BCE, soon after Emperor Qing, then aged 13, ascended the throne, and the project eventually involved 700,000 conscripted workers. Geographer Li Dawan, writing 6 centuries after the first emperor's death, recorded in Shu Jing Shu that Mount Li was a favored location due to its auspicious geology. Famed for its jade mines, its northern side was rich in gold, and its southern side rich in beautiful jade. The first emperor, covetous of its fine reputation, therefore chose to be buried there. Simin Qiang wrote that the first emperor was buried with palaces, towers, officials, valuable artifacts, and wondrous objects. According to this account, 100 flowing rivers were simulated using mercury, and above them the ceiling was decorated with heavenly bodies, below which were the features of the land. Some translations of this passage refer to models or imitations. However, those words were not used in the original text, which makes no mention of the Terracotta Army. High levels of mercury were found in the soil of the tomb mound. giving credence to Sima Qian's account. Later historical accounts suggested that the complex and tomb itself had been looted by Qiang Yu, a contender for the throne after the death of the first emperor. However, there are indications that the tomb itself may not have been plundered. Pretty interesting. And the fact that, so it says, according to this account, 100 flowing rivers were simulated using mercury, and above them the ceiling was decorated with heavenly bodies, below which were the features of the land. Wow, it's extremely imaginative, I guess. We'll see if it's been confirmed or not. We'll keep reading, but obviously this is just description that was given by this historian back then. Once we get into more of what was found, I guess then we'll be able to have a better understanding of it. But again, interesting enough. This, what was a part? The fact that the tomb itself had been, that there was a suggestion that the tomb had been looted by Qiang Yu, which was the contender for the throne after the death of the first emperor. So he was mad that, I guess, the other person existed, wanted to take what was not his. But I guess we don't know if that's true or not, but nonetheless, still pretty interesting. Famed for its jade mines. Wow. One can only imagine something so beautiful. Northern side was rich in gold, and the southern side rich in beautiful jade. Okay, let's learn a little bit about the actual let's call it statue burial site for now, but I guess we can also call it mausoleum, but in this case, for this part, it's the necropolis. Look how beautiful that looks. I mean, again, these are all actual images of the Terracotta Army. When we look at the video that we're going to watch, it's the person actually recording first person the whole way through, and we'll see them all like a lot better. But dude, this is, again, all real pictures. Look how awesome this looks. I'm not gonna get into the descriptions of them because we're gonna learn about it. I'll read about the features of all the statues and whatnot, and but in and of itself, just take a moment to appreciate. Look at it. Look how beautiful that is, and to think that, wow, at one point there were many people dedicated to making these statues. It blows my mind. Again, all right, I'm not gonna get ahead of myself. Let's read about the necropolis first. We'll get a better understanding of the actual physical space of where the Terracotta Army lies. So, the Terracotta Army is part of a much larger necropolis. Ground-penetrating radar and core sampling have measured the area to be approximately 98 square kilometers, which is about 38 square miles. The necropolis was constructed as a microcosm of the emperor's imperial palace or compound, and covers a large area around the tomb mound of the first emperor. The earthen tomb mound is located at the foot of Mount Li and built in a pyramidal shape, and is surrounded by two solidly built rammed earth walls with gateway entrances. The necropolis consists of several offices, halls, stables, other structures, as well as an imperial park placed around the tomb mound. The warriors stand guard to the east of the tomb, up to 5 meters, which is about 16 feet of reddish sandy soil, had accumulated over the site in the 2 millennia following its construction, but archaeologists found evidence of earlier disturbances at the site. During the excavations near the Mount Lee burial mound, archaeologists found several graves dating from the 18th and 19th centuries where diggers had apparently struck terracotta fragments. These were discarded as worthless and used along with soil to backfill the excavations. Interesting. So, they mentioned the tomb. We'll talk about the tomb a bit now. Jump right into that portion. So, the tomb appears to be a hermetically sealed space, roughly the size of a football pitch, which is probably around 100 times 75 meters. The tomb remains unopened, possibly due to concerns over preservation of its artifacts. For example, after the excavation of the Terracotta Army, the painted surface present on some terracotta figures began to flake and fade. The lacquer covering the paint can curl in 15 seconds once exposed to Chian's dry air and can flake off in just 4 minutes. That's the tomb in and of itself. They mentioned the pits beforehand as well, so let's jump right into the pits, because there were 4 pits that have been discovered up until this point. So, 4 main pits, approximately 7 meters, which is about 23 feet deep, have been excavated. These are located approximately 1.5 kilometers, which is about 0.93 miles east of the burial mound. The soldiers within were laid out as if to protect the tomb from the east, where the Qing Emperor's conquered states lie. So, like I said before, 4 main pits, approximately 7 meters. Pit 1, which is 230 meters, about 750 feet long, and 62 meters, which is about 203 feet wide, contains the main army of more than 6,000 figures. Pit 1 has 11 corridors, most more than 3 meters, which is about 10 feet wide, and paved with small bricks, with a wooden ceiling supported by large beams and posts. This design was also used for the tombs of nobles and would have resembled palace hallways when built. The wooden ceilings were covered with reed mats and layers of clay for waterproofing, and then mounded with more soil, raising them about 2 to 3 meters, which is 6 feet 7 inches to 9 feet 10 inches above the surrounding ground level when completed. Pit 2 has cavalry and infantry units as well as war chariots, and is thought to represent a military guard. Pit 3 is the command post with high-ranking officers and a war chariot. Just Pit 3 here. And the Pit 4 is empty, perhaps left unfinished by its builders. Some of the figures in Pits 1 and 2 show fire damage, while remains of burnt ceiling rafters have also been found. These, together with the missing weapons, have been taken as evidence of the reported looting by Chang Yu and the subsequent burning of the site, which is thought to have caused the roof to collapse and crush the army figures below. The terracotta figures currently on display have been restored from the fragments. Other pits that formed the necropolis have also been excavated. These pits lie within and outside the walls surrounding the tomb mound. They variously contain bronze carriages, terracotta figures of entertainers such as acrobats and strongmen, officials, stone armor suits, burial sites of horses, rare animals, and laborers, as well as bronze cranes and ducks set in an underground park. Well, damn. Dude, I mean, we'll take a minute to just appreciate the actual statues. I mean, Wow. It's insane. The craftsmanship, the details, the fact that there's so many of these figures. It's wow, it's amazing. It's probably one of my favorite ones. It's the one I chose for the social media banner that I do to kind of promote the episode. Whoa. And I mean, look at the features on the face. That's insane. Each one with armor. And you'll notice something on each one. I won't say anything yet. I just hope that by you seeing each face of the figure, you'll kind of realize where I'm going with. But if you have a keen eye, you'll notice the details that'll then lead you to a realization. This is a very good example of a picture that could kind of lead you into that realization. Dude, a fucking round of applause. That's amazing. So, just to be clear, Pit 1 contains the main army of more than 6,000 figures. So there's just that one pit that was found. Pit 1. 6,000 figures. With this incredible amount of detail on them. Come on. When human beings put their minds to something, it's just amazing things that happen. Let's look at it. Wow, that's just wow, amazing. Okay. So before we actually jump into the video that we're going to watch, I want to go over some facts. So I have 10 facts about the Terracotta Army that I am going to share with you now. Check this out. Number 1. They were discovered completely by accident. Because up until this point, I haven't really said anything about how it was discovered, what happened. But we're going to jump right into that right now. So check this out. Listen to this. The Terracotta Army was discovered on March 29th, 1974 by a group of farmers, Yang Shifa, his 5 brothers, and neighbor Wang Puzi. So it's P-U-Z-H-I. Puzi. I may be saying that wrong. Let me see. I think I might have... There we are. So that was the person that discovered him, 1974. That is Yang Shifa. Here, I'll make the image a little bit bigger so we can better see him. So, check this out. They were digging a well approximately 1.5 kilometers, which is 0.93 miles east of the Qing Emperor's tomb mound at Mount Li, a region riddled with underground springs and watercourses. For centuries, occasional reports mentioned pieces of terracotta figures and fragments of the Qing necropolis, roofing tiles, bricks, and chunks of masonry. This discovery prompted Chinese archaeologists, including Xiao Kangming, to investigate, revealing the largest pottery figurine group ever found. A museum complex has since been constructed over the area, the largest pit being enclosed by a roofed structure. So, I have another part of an article that I want to read about the same discovery. So, again, it was a farmer in 1974 that discovered the terracotta warriors while digging a well. This was back in the days of Chairman Mao and the farmer. Mr. Yang was given a mere 50 yuan, which is about $7.50, for making the most significant find of the 20th century. Luckily, times have changed in China, and today Mr. Yang receives a monthly allowance from the government and even spends a couple of days a week at the museum to sign books, which is what he's doing there in that picture. He was there doing So he is normally there doing visits to the Terracotta warriors, but pictures of Mr. Yang are strictly prohibited. Like instead, you can pay a fee to have him sign your newly purchased coffee book table. Coffee table book. Coffee book table. Coffee table book. Interesting. Again, the most significant find of the 20th century was some dude just digging a well, and he got $7, the equivalent of $7.50 for it back then. Kind of interesting how a discoverment so big like that, I mean, yeah. Too bad it wasn't on his own property, because that would have, if it would have been on his property, whew, yeah, they would have had to pay him a whole lot more. Although I don't really know how. I guess things were working back in China, but in the 1970s. Still interesting. It's like people finding. Obviously, this is a lot bigger, but it's like people finding money in the streets. Like I've never found money in the streets like that, and I know plenty of people that have found like what. From $100 to like a roll of money, like rolled up, stuck in a corner or something, and barely got a glass of water where I go. Jeez. All right, so we'll move on with these facts. So again, they were discovered completely by accident. Number 2, there were no historical records of them existing at all. So, the discovery of the Terracotta Warriors was a complete surprise to everyone because there are no historical records of them or of an underground army. They had sat untouched underground for more than 2,200 years. This only adds to the mystery, as it is now the largest and most important tomb site in China. So number 3. The scale of the discovery is immense. So, since the discovery of the Terracotta Army, more than 2,000 warriors and horses have been excavated from 3 different burial pits, which were the ones that we spoke about before, with an estimated 6,000 still buried underground. It is perhaps the enormous scale of the discovery that has added to the mystery and captivated the world, leading people to start describing the warriors as the 8th wonder of the world. Number 4. Amazingly, no two figures are exactly alike, which is what I didn't want to spoil beforehand, but when we were seeing the images, we'll probably see them now. If you notice the details on the face, again, none of them are the same. Each one is a completely different person. Again, only one pit had 6,000 figures. That one pit won. And that's not counting the 2,000 that were already discovered that were between horses like we see now and the figures. I mean, look at it. Like, it's like, I'll even move out of the way. Wait, is it this way? Dude. I mean, come on. And the fact that each one is not the same, that should blow your mind right there. Not only the fact that it was discovered in the way it was discovered, but the fact that each one of these, which, think about it, this took time to be able to make. We're talking about 8,000 figures, each one different. Notice it here. Look at that figure and look at the figure in the back. Completely different. Each one with their own different facial expressions, different facial structure. Dude, it's insane. Okay, so incredibly, despite the vast number of warriors, each warrior has unique facial features and styles. The warriors of different ranks were buried in battle formation to represent a real army and are split into infantrymen, archers, generals, cavalrymen, charioteers, officers, and guards of honor, all different in their expressions, clothing, and hairstyles. So, we've seen all this. We understand what it is, where it happened, and the fact that there are so many of them, and the amazing fact that no two figures are alike. Like it says right there. So why was it created? What was the purpose of it? So they were part of they were part of the first emperor's search for immortality, which is him. So China's first emperor, Chang Shi Huang, wanted to live forever. He spent a huge amount of resources building a magnificent underground empire, equipped with everything he would need for the afterlife. He had palaces, an army to protect him, chariots for traveling in, stables full of horses, entertainers, and even his concubines. Covering an area of 56 square kilometers, it is the biggest burial site on Earth. In 1987, the site was given UNESCO World Heritage status and is a major tourist attraction in Xi'an. I would have loved to learn like Mandarin or Cantonese. That would have been so awesome. Or any other, I guess, languages besides like Spanish and English. Would have been so cool. Probably won't be embarrassing myself so much here trying to pronounce names that I have no idea how they're pronounced, and I'm just butchering it. So this is actually a clear example of what I'm about to say right now. So we now know why this all happened. Listen to this interesting detail. It's not just soldiers. So more recent discoveries include terracotta acrobats and strongmen. Another pit contained 15 terracotta musicians and 13 bronze water birds to entertain the emperor in the afterlife. There was also a pit full of stone armor and several pits full of horse skeletons. You can see some of these amazing objects in the exhibition if you go to the actual mausoleum. So, listen to this next one. The figures were an early feat of mass production. Mind you, we're already talking about 8,000 figures in total that have been discovered up until this point. We don't know what's inside of the emperor's actual grave, where he is at, because they don't want to open it, because apparently they think it's filled with like booby traps and whatnot that people don't want to have to deal with. And they don't know if it still works or not, so they're leaving it as it is. Plus, if there's anything we've learned with all these sci-fi movies that we've watched, The Mummy, you don't go into these tombs, you just leave them be and they're fine where they are. We don't need that type of mess. But the figures were an early feat of mass production. What do I mean by this? So, government laborers and local craftsmen created the warriors in workshops. The warriors had the stamps or names of their makers, including administrators, craftsmen, and foremen. Each warrior was built from the ground upwards using different body parts made from thick coils of clay, and the head was made and fired separately. Sculptural details such as hair, facial features, and costume were added by hand before the figure was dried and eventually fired in a huge kiln. Oh, I'm chopping up. I'm cutting up. Oh. All by hand. Again. Let's repeat that little part again. One more time, sorry. So each warrior was built from the ground upwards using different body parts made from thick coils of clay, and the head was made and fired separately. Sculptural details such as hair, facial features, and costume were added by hands before the figure was dried. 8,000, what is it, 6,000 only in the army. Let's repeat that one more time. Again, each one, oh man, you know, it would be so cool to be able to see the stamps that they have them, like the, because each one is stamped with the name of the maker, the administrator, the craftsman, and the foreman. Like the whole team. Teamwork. Makes the dream work. There you go. So, the terracotta figures are life-sized, typically ranging from 175 centimeters, which is about 5.75 feet, to about 200 centimeters, which is 6.6 feet. The officers are typically taller. They vary in height, uniform, and hairstyle in accordance with rank. Their faces appear to be different for each individual figure. Scholars, however, have identified 10 basic face shapes. I mean, obviously. The figures are of these general types: armored infantry, unarmored infantry, cavalrymen who wear a pillbox hat, helmeted drivers of chariots with more armor protection, spear-carrying charioteers, kneeling crossbowmen or archers who are armored, standing archers who are not, as well as generals and other low-ranking officers. There are, however, many variations in the uniforms within the ranks. For example, some may wear shin pads while others do not. They may wear either long or short trousers, some of which may be padded, and their body armors vary depending on rank, function, and position in formation. There are also terracotta horses placed among the warrior figures. Ha! Got them right there. Sweet. So now we know that the whole plan was a mass production of them. We kind of have an explanation of the different types of different types of terracotta figures. Ranging from armored, unarmored. Some of them had shin pads while others didn't. Some had long trousers. Some had short trousers. Pretty interesting. Again, would love to be able to see these with my own 2 eyeballs. Beautiful depiction of them. Oh man, look at them. I wonder. Okay, so I think these might be the ones that have the shin pads on them. With, I think these have the. Well, I saw one standing in the back that probably had like a short trouser on. Again, made by hands, all with incredible amounts of detail. That's probably the most important part of it. So we'll move on to the next one, which is number 8. And it says the warriors were actually painted. So originally, the figures were painted with ground precious stones, intensely fired bones, which would give the color white, pigments of iron oxide, which would be dark red, cinnabar, which is red, malachite, which would be green, azurite, which is blue, charcoal, which is black. We have a cinnabar, barium, copper, silicate mix, which is Chinese purple or Han purple, tree sap from a nearby source, more than likely from the Chinese lacquer tree, which would give the color brown. Other colors including pink, lilac, red, white, and one unidentified color. The colored lacquer finish and individual facial features would have given the figures a realistic feel, with eyebrows and facial hair in black and the faces done in pink. Let me see really quickly. I think I should have an example here. Oh, I went completely over. But this is how it would look if it were painted. Obviously, the ones that were found were not painted because of the amount of time that it had just there. And like we were explained before, the weather in the city where the mausoleum is located is very dry, so it would have flaked off the paint because of the obviously the type of paint that was used. But this is how it would look painted using the colors that we just talked about right now. Pretty interesting. It looks pretty lovely. I mean, just imagine a sea of statues all colored in this way, because at some point that's what they looked like. Crazy. All to please the emperor in his afterlife. which just kind of just like blows my mind because it's a human being. Come on now. But back then it was seen in such a different way, and it was obviously such a higher level of respect for them, and even entertainment for him. Even entertainment for him in the afterlife was assured. That's crazy. But lovely, this is just beautiful, and I hope someone one day maybe goes through the trouble of adding color to it, maybe in a digital manner or something, because this was done by hand. This is actually an imitation of one of them, and they painted it. But again, at one point when the statues were created, they had colors like this. Just imagine how beautiful that would have looked. Wow, amazing. So yeah, warriors were actually painted. We'll move on to the next one, which is pretty interesting. The warriors carried real weapons. So, most of the figures originally held real weapons, which would have increased their realism. The majority of these weapons were looted shortly after the creation of the army or have rotted away. Despite this, over 40,000 bronze items of weaponry have been recovered, including swords, daggers, spears, lances, battle axes, scimitars, shields, crossbows, and crossbow triggers. Most of the recovered items are arrowheads, which are usually found in bundles of 100 units. That sounds like sounds like an action adventure game right there. Studies of these arrowheads suggest that they were produced by self-sufficient autonomous workshops using a process referred to as cellular production or Toyotism. Some weapons were coated with a 10-15 micrometer layer of chromium dioxide before burial that was believed to have protected them from any form of decay for the last 2,200 years. However, research in 2019 indicated that the chromium was merely contamination from nearby lacquer, not a means of protecting the weapons. The slightly alkaline pH and small particle size of the burial soil most likely preserved the weapons. The swords contain an alloy of copper, tin, and other elements including nickel, magnesium, and cobalt. Some carry inscriptions that date their manufacture to between 245 and 228 BCE, indicating that they were used before burial. Nice. And this leads us to the last one, number 10 of the facts about the Terracotta Army, which I had already mentioned beforehand, but the greatest mystery is still to be revealed. The first emperor's tomb has never been opened. So, Emperor Qi Shi Huang's actual tomb remains a mystery to archaeologists and historians as it is still sealed up. There have been geophysical surveys of the tomb mound, but the mausoleum itself has not been excavated. The tomb was written about by Han Dynasty historian Sima Qian, who describes palaces and scenic towers for 100 officials, as well as many rare artifacts and treasures. In addition, the two major rivers of China, the Yangtze and the Yellow River, were simulated in the tomb using mercury, and the tomb ceiling was decorated with the heavenly constellations. From here, Qin Shi Huang could continue to rule over his empire even in the afterlife. Because that's what it is. It all boils down to that big fear of death and wanting to somehow live more, I guess. It is so interesting. So, a little bit about the first emperor. So, the first emperor, who was born Qing Sheng, initially ruled as the king of the Qing state Through forceful military campaigns, he conquered the states occupying much of the current territory of China, bringing an end to the Warring States period. He reformed the culturally and politically distinct states into a single centralized political entity. So in 221 BCE, he officially declared himself Qing Shi Huangdi, a title he coined himself, commonly rendered as the first emperor, that literally translates to First August Emperor of Qing. There was no empty gesture. The first emperor's reforms and unification would forever change the meaning of rulership in East Asia. Interesting. Among his monumental building projects was a monumental tomb of unprecedented splendor, whose scale and luxury became, with the passage of time, the matter of legend. Nevertheless, none of the fantastic tales found in the written record prepared archaeologists for what they would find in the mausoleum of the first emperor. And that's what we just read about right now. Again, a farmer in 1974. Bruh. Where's my dude? Where he at? Mr. Yang. Dude. The most significant find of the 20th century in China, and he did it while excavating a well. That's wow. 2,200 years before its discovery in 1974. Think about that. Wow. So it's so admirable. So that actually ends my portion of what I had prepped about, history, what the Terracotta Army is, where it's located, who found it, how it was discovered, actual descriptions of these statues in and of itself. We know that there were different, each statue had different details to it, although they did say that there's 10 basic facial shapes that they use for all of the statues, but nonetheless the details on each one is completely different. We just learned literally that each statue is marked by the craftsman, the foreman, the administrator. The emperor did it because he wanted to live forever. Freddie Mercury sang it pretty well. He says, "Who wants to live forever?" First emperor did. That's why he had all this created, with his fear of the afterlife. Everything from, again, huge army all the way to musicians. People that played different instruments, obviously musicians, but yeah, entertainment for him in the afterlife. That was the whole point of creating this. They were all colored at one point. I would have loved to see that. Imagine these statues all colored differently, or at least the armor all the same, but features and you can tell some of them have facial hair on them. Some of them don't. Pretty good example right here. Wow. All done by hand. To satisfy some dude's ego. That's insane. But here we are today, appreciating it. And I guess learning about it, but I guess it didn't work out for him at the end. They all carried real weapons. Another thing we just read right now. Extremely interesting.